However, there are some stories, mostly quite recent ones, that claim to report real cases of time travel. One of them is an interview with Daryl Dean. He claims he is 27 years old and was born in 2006. This would make him about 13 today, so presumably he could look at his future activities and even meet himself, which we're sure would be a very strange experience. He claims that he came back to the present day because in the year 2028, time travel is released to the public, about the same time as the disclosure of extraterrestrials. He decided to visit the past in the year 2033 and arrived in 2018. His reasons for choosing that year are partly personal. He wanted to meet a relative of his who had died by the time he starts time traveling. He describes the future in glowing terms. He says that in 2021 there will be the invention of an electronic implant that fits into the human brain, which vastly increases our mental capabilities, as well as allowing us to interface with the internet and other people directly, a biological computer network. There is no cash and all finance is electronic. There's no privacy, but then again, there's no crime. And most people agree to that trade-off. In the early 2020s, somebody invents an exoskeleton, like a mechanical suit, that gives the wearer superhuman strength, speed and agility. By 2026, all diseases are cured and organs can be mass-produced in 3D printers. In 2025, a base opens on the moon where people can go on holiday. By the early 2030s, time tourism is also common, although most individuals don't identify themselves and instead go native with the population they're visiting by wearing clothes and hairstyles, so on, that blend in with their fashions. In 2027, there's an AI singularity, which means computer power matches that of the human brain. This is much earlier than most of today's electronic experts predict. They usually nominate the mid-2040s. By the 2060s, humans are routinely backing up their brains on computers. Yes, Daryl has visited his own future too. He also says dinosaurs will be cloned and there'll be real-life zoos like the one depicted in the film Jurassic Park. Woolly mammoths will also be recreated. He says that in his own time, almost all work is done by robots and people spend their time on creative activities like art, music and writing. He has a robot in his home called Alistair, who wakes him up in the morning and washes up in the kitchen. His fridge and cooker prepare his meals by voice or brain chip activation. An interaction with extraterrestrials ensures that world peace is maintained so that the Earth can join the galactic community. There is also only one major international religion. However, it's not all rosy. There are still problems to be faced in the 2030s. The biggest is overpopulation. There are 9 billion people on the Earth, and this has partly been solved by people moving to underwater cities, which is an extraordinary idea. Some countries also give their citizens free food. Climate change has resulted in polar ice melting and sea levels rising. Despite the rapid advancement of technology and many aliens visiting the planet, who presumably have even higher technology, a complete and permanent solution has yet to be found for these crises. Daryl has not done any open interviews and keeps his identity strictly private. This means he's unable to prove his story, and neither can anybody else, except by waiting a few years and seeing for ourselves, of course. It doesn't help matters that there are many other people claiming to be time travelers who make very different predictions. One of them, another anonymous man who calls himself Noah, apparently passed a polygraph test. Like Daryl, he also claims that his present is the early 2030s and that he's come back in time to inform people of what is to come. He says he is 50 years old, but he looks much younger. He accounts for this by saying that in the future there are age reduction drugs which have transformed him into somebody who is physically 25. Alternatively, Daryl doesn't mention this advancement, which is odd because it would have enormous social and cultural impacts, especially on an overpopulated planet. Noah said that Donald Trump will be re-elected US president for a second term in 2020. This is easy to verify because that is only 1 year away. He also says that mobile phones will be much bigger, but what about the brain chip that makes normal communication unnecessary? The US president in 2030 is called Ilana Remicky. but that name cannot be found anywhere. This is odd because most people able to run for US president in 11 years' time are likely already to be involved in politics today, or at least have some public prominence. Hindsight is of course the natural illumination by which these future histories can be confirmed or falsified. This has yet to happen. The best known example is John Titor, who became a popular contributor to internet forums starting around 2000. He said he had come back in time from the year 2011. It led to the cancellation of the 2004 Olympics in Athens. This global conflict finally ended in 2015. Now, in 2019, it's obvious this never happened. These discrepancies will lead many people to be skeptical of the assertions of Daryl, Noah, and all the other alleged time travelers. It is true they could simply be making their stories up, but that might not be the only explanation. Time travel is possible according to the laws of physics, and they are currently understood, at least travel into the future. In fact, there is already a scientifically certified time traveler called Valery Polyakov. He traveled into the future during 1994 and 1995 by spending 14 months orbiting the Earth aboard Mir, a former Russian space station. His journey into the future was very short, only just over 1 millisecond, but he has definitely achieved it by orbiting around the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour for all that time. This was worked out by Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity, which states that time dilation occurs during motion. If an astronaut was aboard a much faster spacecraft than Mir, such as one able to reach close to the speed of light, they would travel a far greater distance into the future, possibly millions of years, if the spacecraft was very close to light speed. Traveling backwards in time is a different matter, and most physicists think that it's not possible. Along with the laws of physics preventing it, we would also experience possible causality paradoxes fueled the plots of many science fiction stories, such as Doctor Who and Back to the Future. However, there is distinct and very exciting new evidence that suggests that at least information can be transmitted backwards through time from the future. In 2017, a group of Australian scientists tried a variation on the double-slit experiment, which is a quantum physics demonstration of how a photon can be both a particle and a wave, depending on the circumstances. The enigma of this experiment is that the photon responds to whether it is being observed or not. Nobody knows the mechanism of this remarkable property. However, the mystery has deepened because the scientists tried using atoms of helium instead of photons, and they varied the use of the slits. When they did this, they found that the atoms knew in advance whether the slit was going to be in a place, even though the process was carefully randomized, and the presence or non-presence of the slit was an unpredictable event of the future. This ought to be impossible. The process might explain precognition. This is something many people experience, and sometimes it can save your life. For instance, one of the passengers on the Titanic refused to board the ship because he had an inexplicable but overwhelming sense of dread. He somehow knew something terrible was about to happen. If our brain is a quantum computer, which many scientists now suspect, it's possible we can gain limited knowledge of the future through the process discovered by the Australian scientists. There is another element of time travel, that the future is not really an event in the same way as the past is. The past cannot be changed, but the future is infinitely changeable. For example, suppose the premonition experienced by the Titanic passenger was shared by the entire crew. The ship would not have sailed and therefore would not have sunk. The sinking of the Titanic is now in the past and therefore will always be an event in time, but beforehand it was non-existent. Premonitions are not really visions of the future, they're visions of possibilities. The only alternative is that the information is being transmitted from the future, in which the Titanic disaster is the past, at which point it is possible to avert the disaster and therefore it no longer is an event at all. In which case, what happens to the source of that information? Does it simply cease to exist? Researchers have studied reports and research into precognition, and they're certain that it exists. For this to be the case, then how can it work when time travel into the past is impossible? Many believe that the answer may lie in the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics. This is the extraordinary but increasingly likely theory that there's more than one universe. In fact, there are a vast number of them, possibly infinite. When a person acts on precognition, they change the universe they are into another. This would mean there is a universe where the Titanic did not sail on its fatal voyage, therefore the future of that universe is different to the universe where it did sail, the one we live in. This means that it may well be possible to create the illusion of backwards time travel, even if it cannot be done literally. If we moved to a universe which was identical or even very closely resembled the Earth's own past, then it would be exactly the same experience as visiting the actual past. In such a circumstance, you could kill your own parents and not cease to exist. When you return to your home universe, everything would be exactly as you left it. But in the other universe where you killed your parents, you, for better or worse, would never be alive. The many worlds interpretation solves a lot of the theoretical problems with time travel. It disperses the causality paradoxes. This could be the answer to whether Daryl, Noah, and John Titor and so on are telling the truth. They may be. However, they've not travelled from the future on the timeline of our own universe, but have come here from another universe altogether. This would be described as playing God, and the ethics of the practice will be the one for the moral maze. But it doesn't break the laws of physics. Researchers think they would enjoy time travel, so let's hope the stories about it are true.